Check one. Check 1, 2. Check 1, 2. Check 1. Check 1, 2. Check 1, 2. Check 1. 1, 2. 1, 2. Hello, YouTube. Turn it on here, and there'll be that one little click. But then you don't. Everyone's going to be quiet and listening to you anyway, right? This speaker is kind of superfluous. Yeah.
can't play this card like 7 million times. Like you just kind of like make it count and like add for your. So you need to be sure like, okay, like this project is not going to completely fail, like fall flat on its face or something. I don't know if you've ever seen like there's the Double Fine documentary. Yeah. It's like the behind the scenes during their Kickstarter. Yeah. Like that shit's super insane.
Yeah, I've seen all of it. Like to watch all of the honestly, but yeah, they were massively successful.
Yeah.
They also were not an unknown quantity too. Like for us, I feel like a lot of people would see our project and as far along as it is, and be like, well, these guys have done this before, they've done the actually deliver. So I feel a lot more comfortable at 30 days. At the end of this campaign, when it's over, you will get your download. It's like done, you're just helping us get over the finish line market.
Yeah, makes sense.
It's one of those awesome scenarios.
Yeah, you probably have to fit shit. That's like, this is like Skyrim meets
Dark Souls,
dating scenes.
oh yeah, whatever. I mean, Dark Souls and Metroidvania are
Yeah.
big but again, no one has VR hardware now, so
Yeah.
it's like only two.
Do you know the numbers?
It's like 400,000 buys on the market.
Okay.
Maybe like
That's fine. That's okay higher than I thought it was.
yeah. I mean, it's growing, like, but slowly. Price drops are happening slowly. PlayStation VR is probably like 3 or 4 million out there. It's pretty popular. Fallout 4 is in VR now.
It's funny because like it's almost like doing S. Like it's kind of like you do it once and you become a believer. I mean VR.
No, yeah, acid.
I don't know. Yeah, I mean like there's all this stuff of like fucking weird of like when he was doing like the acid test. Exactly happened. Kind of like once you do it, you're like converted. Like this is the greatest thing. That's funny. Just one second.
Yeah, I feel like whenever I think about VR, I wonder about I wonder, do you feel like it'll be a niche market forever? Do you anticipate like or also what do you think
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It has a lot of applications.
See, this is my friend.
3D TV is only good one thing. It's like making 3D slightly better than 3D glasses.
Yeah.
VR is like lots of
Oh boy,
education,
you made it.
training.
Okay.
You look like you're
I have friends
Last minutely? Well, I just ate a large bowl of pasta too. At home before leaving, so things don't feel good in this body. Oh boy. This is everybody. I thought this would be, the event starts in like 7 minutes. Like,
it might be just me reading
Are you going first? Well, I guess is not everyone who participated reading? No. You mean everyone who participated in the workshop? But they're all reading. This is like a little mental puzzle.
The ones that are showing up
Are reading. Okay.
but they're not all showing up.
Oh boy. That was an eventful night yesterday.
It was that how funny was that deck?
Oh yeah, it was great. Yeah. I mean, I just really dislike that guy. Like, I was looking at him the whole time. He was just up to no good. The guy was pretending to be on his phone, the skinny hipster dude in front of us.
So you knew who it was?
No, there's an inference I'm making. It was clearly like that guy. If he knows Joel and Sophie and like, didn't you notice there was a dude who was just for like a prolonged period of time there, sitting there, all like. He actually walked by us after we left too, on the corner of the street, but kind of left right after. Okay. You literally did notice one guy sitting there for 75% of the time. That's okay. I'm not faulting him. He just upset me. He's just a very skinny guy, even skinnier than Joel, with a kind of a trendy bang haircut and glasses, bespectacled, very pale, very white. Black clothing, just all in black, you know?
He's rubbing you in all the
I don't remember that. Oh, okay, that's interesting. Because there was those two girls whom you knew who left for whatever, Voggy, Vega, something. Furco. Yeah. But yeah.
Oh, it's funny. Anyway.
Is this where you've been holding court for this workshop? You know? No. Okay. Oh, you guys meet at social, right?
No, it was. This has been, that's one part of this thing I really didn't like was, all the times you would, we would meet in Terry Sealing Week.
Oh, why? What was the?
It was supposed to be sunny out.
Sunny. But I mean, aren't there many other
Hey,
places
Anya.
to better afford yourself?
Anyway, you can talk to this.
Yeah.
How you doing, Anya? I'm great, I'm great.
Nice to see you. This is my friend Matt.
Hey, how you doing? This is
Yo.
my friend Wasim.
How's it going?
Oh my gosh.
Oh boy, way to go. Not much. My name's Wasim, by the way.
Wasim, Anya.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Are you gonna read tonight? Have you been part of this? Okay, you have.
Yeah.
He's my friend
Oh, cool.
to support me.
Yeah, this is my friend.
We're all
here to
bringing a
support me.
friend.
Just the one
It's
friend.
a big
that I-
support system.
It's a plus one thing.
Yeah, that's what I figured. Like, that's pretty much all I could rope into coming here tonight. One friend. Are you nervous?
Yeah. I mean, I guess we'll see how it goes. I might get more nervous.
Yeah.
Depending on how
It's
badly it
kind
goes.
of high. Whatever.
In my experience, you just like lose consciousness the moment the microphone's in front
Yeah, I
of
feel
you. In a way, like you just like black out, and then
God, there's
people tell you that you did well.
Only one.
So I feel like I'm the only person that went low tech.
Okay, I literally took like photos of my computer screen because I have such limited internet access right now.
kind of low tech.
That's ridiculous. I just couldn't do anything else.
Yeah. Spot the lawyer in the room. You know, the guy holding a bunch of papers.
Yeah.
I did one earlier this year, and every single person read from their own published book, and then I was at the end, and
With your
I
phone?
do not have a published book,
Oh, okay,
so
yeah.
I was like, all right, this is my phone. Like,
Yeah.
but
Legit.
Oh, that's that. Where was this event where everyone had a published book?
it was just a living room one, but it was like
Okay.
just chapbooks and stuff. It was,
Okay.
Some of them were intimidating, but some of them weren't that much.
What was it? Where was it?
It was in Ottawa. It was like a living room thing, but it was Bad Nudes who organized
Oh,
it.
yeah.
Which Guillaume did it actually. Yeah.
Cool.
Hey, you'll like this. I know her because of Sean Crack.
Oh my gosh, you know Sean?
No, well, the joke that I have is that you know the Hero with 1,000 Faces, the Joseph Campbell thing.
Okay.
So for me, Sean, Wasim has 1,000 friends, but they're all Sean Cryer.
But he's never met him. He's just somehow.
Sean Cryer
Yeah.
is the
Yeah.
stand-in for all the friends.
That's true. Yeah, that's funny. Well, I know him.
He's a
So,
real person.
so it seems like, oh, I got at this friend's birthday party, and I got this, and I'm like, Sean Cryer,
Yeah.
and
It's also just a really good name. It's got a good.
He's got a good ring to it.
I wish I had that.
Yeah.
it's like the sad man name.
Yeah, for sure.
Hey.
Oh man, so you're still living near there, Vendôme, west of
No.
in
Well, I
the.
moved to Ottawa for 2 years, and then I just got back and moved to
Wow,
Verdun.
it's been a while since we've seen each other. Yeah, okay.
I went out
There's
to
wine
my
you can get.
master's.
For free? Yeah. Yeah.
Wait, there's alcoholic beverages? Yeah.
Okay, you're like yes.
I'm very shy at events. I need a little.
But yeah, so you went to Ottawa, you came back,
Yep.
and now where do you live in Verdun?
Second Avenue.
Oh, it's not so bad.
Yeah.
So
Right around the corner from the Verdun Metro, pretty much. So.
yeah. I mean, I frequent that area often because I live in Pointe Saint Charles now.
Oh, I see.
So
Do they still have those speakers on the streets?
in Pointe Saint Charles.
No, I've heard that.
Oh, I mean, I hear them a lot in winter.
They used to have these speakers on the streets that would play like
Yeah.
the radio.
Yeah, but they have. I think they turn them on in winter more than they do in. I don't think they. But I think they're there. They're definitely there because I've heard them in winter.
He is too. Audience member.
Oh, hi. So, Wasim. We're clarifying that.
Yeah.
Are you reading? No, I'm not. Okay. Wow, look at all these audience members. Exciting. Two. Three.
Well, he doesn't come. It's kind of like having my mom.
Oh boy.
You are not my father.
Yeah, let's not deconstruct that.
So do you want to meet the guy at the workshop?
It's really like immediately.
Hello, hello. Hey guys, we're gonna start. If you wanna come, like, sort of sit all alongside the little thing. Yeah, just all over here. We're gonna do like a mosh pit style reading, like this. You can sit on like the little steps if you want, yeah. You can like sit alongside. Yeah, so this is gonna be the stage and then we're gonna read like this, yeah. Let's do a thing. Everyone's in? What's up, guys? How's it going? Welcome to the first ever Godberd Alternative School Creative Writing Showcase. We have two groups tonight. We have the fiction group that worked with me, and we have the poetry group that worked with Laura.
Yes. We're very excited to focus our students or showcase our students' writing. We didn't have a preparatory class. I don't know if you did for public readings. Did you workshop with your students about reading? No. So this is your workshop. And yeah, so
honestly, it was a thing where so Godberd, this was like the very first batch of workshop participants that we got in, and there was no kind of, what we had was like a 9-week cycle to work with our participants, but we all just loved them so much that we decided to put on a reading and like have them sort of perform and invite people to come and join us. So we are going to have 5 fiction writers from my group and then 5 poetry writers from Laura's group. And we're going to do, the first half is going to be 3 fiction writers and then 2 poetry, and we're going to do like 1 fiction, 1 poetry, 1 fiction, 1 poetry. So, sounds good?
keep you on your toes. And just a note about the space, you're in Gamma right now, which is part of Godberd, and Godberd is 3 buildings. Gamma is the gallery aspect, and we have a different curatorial team that takes over every month. And so it's not predictable. It depends on who the curator is every month. And we would appreciate as well if you signed up. There's a sign up or like a guest list at the front door, and you'll be emailed about our newsletter and our upcoming events, and it'd be great for us to know who is here tonight. And every event that we have here is Godberd sponsored, which is why yeah, just enjoy your refreshments. It's on us, and because we're happy to support community in this very thing. And one last thing, so these were our guinea pig classes, and in 2018 we're going to expand the school, so we're going to continue to have creative writing workshops, but far more classes offered. So if you sign up to the newsletter, you'll be able to keep on top of what classes are going to be offered. So Guillaume, you can introduce your first writing student.
Let's do it. Very first, we're going to have Jay Rosenkratz. Jay works in VR and in tech and has a studio that's called Martav. And he also has a novel that he's working on, which is what we workshopped during the 9 weeks that we worked together. So Jay, I'm guessing you're going to read from your novel?
I wrote another novel.
Oh, you went? Damn. Awesome. Do you guys want to hear Jay? Jay Rosenkratz, everybody.
Hello. Okay, so some context. I'm about to introduce you to one of the protagonists in this novel I workshop with Guillaume. His name's Kerwin Coslow. And I'll just thank Guillaume for suggesting that I change his name from Kermit Coslow because of Kermit the Frog associations. Cold copper light shone through tendrils of gray smoke
illuminating iron stairs which led down to Ratsy Pardiggle's place. To the naked eye, Ratsy's appeared to be a boarded-up bookshop, but Kerwin Coslow knew the front was only a cheap illusion. Behind the door, there was a bustling underground card game. Energized by the vast possibilities, Kerwin knocked on Ratsy's door. A panel slid back, revealing a scrutinizing eye. Better safe than sorry when the constables could arrive without warning and raid your game, leaving nothing but the angry and the penniless. But that was the city of Waldron's Gate for you, corrupted to the core. The eye appraised him. Kerwin had worn his long brown leather coat with silver lining like the clouds and combed his short hair sideways. He was only 17, but shift games weren't legal anywhere in Waldron's Gate, and he'd been coming here to play the small stakes for a time now. But the credits burning a hole in his pocket were not his usual stakes. Not tonight, with Fortune Isle blazing like 10,000 diamonds high overhead. The door groaned open with a burst of steam. A long hallway opened into a salon filled with dark blue light and music. Some gamblers were already at play. Other gathered about the bar, sipping their ale and making exaggerated complaints about the staleness of Ratsy's food. The air was a pleasing mix of sound. The click of a flaming lighter near the head of a cigar, the shuffling of split decks overlapping, clay chips changing hands between bent-bodied gamblers caught in the limbo between abject despair and foolish hope. Ratsy minded the cash cages, as always. A thin man with paranoid eyes and an outrageous beard, he didn't look like much, but rumor said he was connected to the highest levels of Edgar Cogsmith's criminal organization. He yawned when he saw Kerwin, then waved a hand dismissively. No small stakes tonight, kid. Need all the tables. Everybody's trying to hustle their way into the big game in the clouds. Kerwin pulled the wad of credits from his pocket and slid them through an opening in the chain-link fence. Ratsy's brows flicked up and he counted the cash. It was all the money Kerwin had to his name. 1,000 credits, more money than he had ever saved in his life. But to buy into the grand tournament at the grand opening of Fortune Isle in the sky, he needed to turn it into 10,000 tonight. For a moment, Ratsy seemed like he might turn Kerwin away. But Ratsy was no charity worker. He fed Kerwin a rack of clay chips and a seat marker for table 10. Kerwin walked the salon and surveyed the green felt tables, the high-backed wooden chairs and filament bulbs dangling like spiders on metal thread, the craftsmanship of the paper cards and the automaton dealers that served them. The city crawled with Cogsmith's automatons, shoulders stamped with EC, the letters back to back like solemn sentries, both encircled by a cog's cold embrace. Kerwin ordered a pint of ale at the bar to calm his nerves and watched a powdered lady in a tight corset lose a heap of cash to a man with a mechanical arm. He tipped and sipped, then pulled the piece of folded-up paper from his pocket. A brightly colored flyer, the parchment no longer crisp and new, like when he found it pinned to the window of his father's repair shop, but creased by frequent reading. It hadn't left his side since he found it. Even as shiny new posters proclaiming the grand tournament at Fortune Isle had been tacked up all around the city. For the 1,000th time, he studied the picture of the laughing man piloting over clouds with grace, the curves of the smiling lady at his side. His eyes devoured the words, though he'd long committed them to memory. For 7 straight nights, he'd seen them emblazoned on the back of his eyelids when he tried to sleep. Fortune Isle, champion, 1 million credits. The metal man slapped his back. The ale flew from Kerwin's outstretched hand and soaked the floor in brown foam. He watched the clay chips clatter even as he felt his shoulder smash the ground. The flyer sank into the cold, wet wood. Kerwin looked up. Barber, an enforcer for Edgar Cogsmith. His face was thickly bearded, and a yellow scar ran beneath his right eye like constabulary caution tape. The blood-red head of a decapitated automaton hung from one hand. A large, rusted copper knife was strapped to his hip. Kerwin felt the man's knee on his chest. He wheezed and gasped, struggling for air while trying to think. He knew Barber by reputation and had heard all sorts of stories about the man who wore an automaton's head and his knives. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That was great. The first poet that I'm going to introduce, oh wait, before that, just so you know, this is being live streamed, and my mom took, yeah, the camera's there. My mom is a retired teacher, and she took tremendous interest in my students, and she wanted to know all about them. And so my mom's watching the live stream right now, so everyone should, like on the count of 3, say hi, Margot. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Hi, Margot! Okay. That aside, the first poet that I'm introducing is Raziel Agan. She is a very soft-spoken woman with a fierce intelligence and works, her day job is as a yoga teacher. And the work that she submitted to us reluctantly was constantly stunning in her natural gift. So, Raziel.
Okay, so thanks, Laura. Thanks, Guillaume. And thanks, all you guys. Is it okay if I leave? Is this good? Okay. So, after you went Nova, tiny pinpricks punched through a black, backlit sheet of paper looked to us like the Milky Way. How badly we want a starry, starry night at hand in our grasp. We want so much to hold on to constellations. Instead, they collapse, go nova, and move on right through us. Yeah, as if. As if we could catapult ourselves over this frontier, this barrier, slalom our way through a handcrafted galaxy backwards in time, to a time when we had no decisions to make, nothing to consider, to a time when everything we saw, everything we did, everything we said we saw, everything we said we did, and did everything we said we would, were all congruent, aligned. Someone nice then comes along and shows us how to fold even pleats. The night sky turns into a paper fan. By holding it over our eyes, we become mysterious. We make believe we can be anything. We're open, adaptable. We smooth out our sheet and start over, rebending our page into an origami paper crane. We trip on mushroom clouds, hallucinatory fissions of impossible proportions, a traceless annihilation. We sharpen the folds and define our creases with a filed whalebone that feels good to hold. We meet our edge. When we close our eyes, we envision 1,000 of us taking flight, then dissolving as our wish to live more simply takes shape. When we open them again, we are greeted by the morning star. When there's no more paper left, when it's all over, I won't have any wrinkles. I'll just have one of those faces, the kind that stays smooth forever. I'll probably move to Marfa. I'll seek out an impenetrable aloneness, keep odd hours and talk to no one for days on end. I will find a plot of land and build myself a tiny home in an upcycled corrugated shipping container. It will be all eco-environmental, solar sustainable, trendy trends, but I won't like it for these reasons. I will like it for its compactness, everything tucked in tight inside it, all neatly folded away. I will like it for its minimalism that will force me to downsize and purge, get rid of all the things I could live without, all the things I could never live without, and all the things I said I wish I could take back. I will like it for its skylight rooftop, giving me access to the sky night and day in, day out. Out back, I'll have a yard with green beans and cherry tomatoes. I will eat nothing but green beans and cherry tomatoes and drink coffee like water, neat, black, no milk, no sugar. The space inside, limited only by the imagination, will help me to open to the possibility of reconfiguration, 144 square feet, seeing from the inside. A new start, starting over, reshaping, moving on. By obscure means, we alter each other. We each will have become who the other ought to have been. Together, we emerge in congruence, lighter somehow, in units of experience measured in entanglement. I'll surprise even myself with resilience. I won't have really seen this happening. I didn't believe I could make do. Who knew the stars would go on being without you after you went nova? Thanks.
Thanks, Raziel. All the beautiful people that just came in, if you guys want to kind of come down or come on the side or come in the back or something, just go for it. Yeah, you could sit in the front here if you guys want. We got we got Olivia who's here now. We got Quinn. Pamela. Just all right, so up next we're going to have Anya Lebovich. Anya was like really beautiful discovery for me. She was a complete unknown going through the workshop for me, but I really enjoy getting a taste of her voice, and to a point where as the workshop went on, I found myself wanting more of it, and I still want more of it. So I'm really happy to bring you Anya.
Everyone. Thanks, Guillaume, for that introduction. It's really nice. So I'm going to read something from a short story that I wrote called Something's Better Than Nothing. Something's better than nothing, he told me. You should take the job. What the fuck, Steve? It's not that big of a deal. You probably wouldn't even see anyone you know. None of the boys go there anymore. Serving steak frites with my tits out isn't a big deal. I raised an eyebrow at him. You do have nice tits. He was trying to be charming. That's not really the point, is it? I retorted. It's not like it would be forever, you know. I'm going to find work any day now. I think things are too far gone between Steve and me. Some people just get together to fuck each other up. Not in the beginning, though. Oh, no. At first, it's the best thing that's ever happened to you. Suddenly, all the shitty parts of life are worth it. You bolster yourself and bear down and weather the storm and all that, because you know there's someone on the other side waiting for you. You start to think that you're glad you decided to stick around after all. It's dangerous to be that happy. I met up with Angela later that day. She stared at me from across the table, expressionless, occasionally coming to life to take a sip of coffee while I rehashed the whole thing. Honestly, I don't even know what you're going on about half the time. He thinks I should take the job. Yeah, well, easy for him to say. Something's better than nothing? Please. Does he realize that's basically how you two ended up together? Sorry, babe, but he's not exactly a catch. She was right. I could have argued, but there wasn't much to say. Isn't he the one who didn't want you to do that burlesque thing a few months back? Uh-huh. I was barely listening. I remember when Mom told me about her first date at Amazon's with Ray. It's pretty ballsy to take someone to a strip club on a first date, isn't it? I asked, cringing. I wondered if bad taste in men could be hereditary. Mom had actually very, very nearly ended up with Ray. They got pregnant, and she was so excited. Like most people who don't know what to do with themselves until a baby comes along. A tiny human who is totally dependent on you in every way. An easy fix when you're not quite sure what your next move is going to be. A few weeks later, Mom had a miscarriage. Ray wasn't home, so she took a cab to the hospital alone. Fuck Ray, I used to tell her. Good riddance. She would nod in agreement, but sometimes when she told the story, she'd get this glazed over look as though she were recounting a very moving experience. My dad was an accountant, a much more practical choice, and one that my mother never quite fully talked herself into. He wasn't her usual type. He had a large bald spot on the back of his head, and when we went to the beach, he would make my mother apply sunscreen to it before he'd even get out of the car. He refused to wear a hat because of sweat or something. When I was a kid, his snoring gave me nightmares. It was just the kind of thing to fuel my anxious brain. I pitied my mother lying beside him and hated to think that was the future that inevitably awaited me, night after night, a chorus of phlegmy reverberations. And now here was Steve, encouraging me to work a block away from Mom's old favorite date spot. They've got a great buffet, he tried to remind me. I nodded, thinking of the men we used to see there devouring chicken wings, a plate beside them piled high with discarded bones licked clean. Angela and I were always one-upping each other, especially when it came to rolling joints. It had taken me ages to find a reliable dealer in the neighborhood. I didn't care for the kids rolling up on bikes, skinny bodies breathing hard, the backs of their t-shirts soaked through with sweat. The Wizard was much more my style. He pulled into the driveway in an old purple Tercel that looked like it had encountered every pothole in the city. Somehow I had become that dreaded customer that would only buy in the smallest quantities in an attempt to curb my own habit through sheer lack of availability. I was scaling back. I'd thought about quitting, just the week before even, but everyone knows that's not how it works with these things. You need to start buying more weed. Okay, well, I mean, if you think it's a good idea. Yeah, just like that. I know I've been messaging you a bit more lately, but I don't know what I'm supposed to do with all of this, I said, as he handed me 4 bricks, neatly vacuum sealed. Offload it, see what you can do. If not, I'll take it back. From the packaging to the return policy, this guy was the real deal. He didn't talk much, mostly out of politeness or necessity, hidden behind a veil of stringy brown hair. Sometimes I would go meet him in his car. Other times he'd come inside. When he took his sunglasses off, I could see how nervous he was, the way his eyes darted around the room, careful not to rest on anything in particular for too long. He never stayed to smoke, always too busy for that. There was something about him that I related to. He just didn't seem capable of ripping anyone off. Besides, it's cheaper to buy in bulk. Everyone knows that. It had been Angela's idea to put the ad up, Northside 420. I chose a vibrant illustration of a lady rolling a blunt, but people were still surprised to see me when I slid into the passenger seat of their car. I made them park a few blocks down from where I actually lived so the neighbors wouldn't get suspicious. I told Steve I'd gotten into walking for my anxiety. What are you so anxious about? Ever since you started this new job, you seem kinda on edge. He looked at me with his head slightly tilted to one side, like he was looking at a puppy, or maybe he was a puppy. I wasn't sure which. You have a great body, you know. No need to feel self-conscious. They're treating you nice there, right? No one's giving you any trouble, are there? He was wallowing in the wading pool and didn't even know it. I felt a slight pang, but then just as quickly as it came, it went away again. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That was very good, and I want to read the rest of it as well. You were right. So our next poet is Tamis Seguin. Tamis is such a wonderful, also mysterious fellow. I always thought of him as the wizard of the class, like just this very quiet wizard that would come in, and his sensibility comes from like a Hungarian Robert Frost, and just a patient, gentle, observant voice that was such a delight to work with. So Tamis is going to read something he wrote first in Hungarian and then translated into English.
Kiszárad csendben cselekedtem a semmiségben, cél nélkül gondolkodtam szeliden az életemről. Minek is csináltam ezt vagy azt, kitörölhetetlen eseményekben. Kitettem azt, amit meg kellett volna mentenem. Hogy is van az, amit akartam belőled? Az utcán kanyarodik a gyengeségemnek a kalandjai, minden sarkon van történetem, befolyásolt kénytelenségem. Nem szedtem össze, és most őszre össze kell szednem, mert takarítatlanságban nem illik lenni. Eredmények keserűen kelnek a földből. In the dried out silence, I acted in nothingness. Aimlessly, gently, I thought about my life. Why did I do this or that in ineffaceable events? I put out what I should have saved. What is it again that I wanted from you? The adventures of my weaknesses bend around the street. There's a story on every corner, influenced by the things I must do. I didn't pick up the pieces, and so I'll have to pick them up by autumn, because it isn't fitting to be unclean. The results bitterly rise out of the ground. Yeah.
Thank you, Tamis. Last for the first half, we're going to have Gene Kruger. Gene is... Honestly, Gene doesn't need any introduction, right? Do it!
Oh, that was stressful. So, in terms of context, am I sort of missing it? So I was interested in writing a story about about antipsychotics, and the person that introduced the first antipsychotic was in Montreal, and so I've been kind of messing around with that, and this is the latest version that I have, which I think got a lot better because of everybody in the workshop, and so I appreciate it. Okay. I was thinking today about the neighbors I used to have when I was a kid. Do you know what I mean? Her face was soft and round, with large green eyes, full lips, and a small straight nose. She wore her hair naturally, bangs falling gently over her forehead, brown locks covering most of her ears. Sunlight illuminated errant strands. She was dressed in a light blue terry cloth cardigan over a white blouse, striped capri-style pants, and black flats. The last time Gregor had seen her, a month earlier, she had been wearing nothing but a hospital gown, her face contorted, teeth clenched, as she struggled with the orderlies, her hair wet with sweat and matted to her forehead. Today, he was embarrassed to notice how beautiful she was. The tremor in her fingers didn't detract from it at all, not a bit. I'm not sure yet. Can you tell me more? She frowned slightly. Gregor could not tell if it was irritation at Dr. Rosenzweig's inability to cue on her cryptic reference, or whether she was simply concentrating on the memory. The latter, it seemed, because she went on. When I was 10 or 11, we lived in this house, which was attached to another house, and we had these neighbors. Yes, I remember now. Was it true? Did you really remember? Dr. Rosenzweig had more than 50 patients under his direct care at any one time and supervised the treatment of countless others. Gregor could not imagine that he retained the finer details of past sessions with all, or even most of them, but he acted as though he did. Gregor always had to consult his notes, sometimes even during sessions. They were a family with a mother and a father and 2 daughters. The daughters were twins, my age. I remember. She nodded absently at this, as though Dr. Rosenzweig's remembering was no longer important. I liked the twins very much, and we were all friends. We played at each other's house all the time and around the neighborhood. We walked to school together. She stopped. What is it? It's funny. No one could be closer to the twins than they were to each other, but I was pretty close to them all the same. Most people couldn't tell them apart, but I always could. I could always tell when the twins tricked other people by pretending to be each other. Clara's features were ever so slightly sharper than Catherine's. I don't know why other people couldn't see it. It makes perfect sense to me. How's that? Your work. You notice things that other people don't. She frowned again and leaned back in her chair. Her gaze turned downwards towards her lap, where her hands, still tremoring, were clasped. She lay silent for a moment. Gregor noticed that Dr. Rosenzweig chose to remain silent as well. This always impressed him, how careful Rosenzweig was with his interventions. He always knew when it was better to say nothing. Gregor never did. Rosenzweig told him that this would come with experience. What I was thinking about was this thing I used to do. Yes? But it feels strange to talk about it. Why? Because I remember what I did, but not the lead-up. I don't know how I ended up doing it. Like in a dream? Gregor arched his head towards Rosenzweig. That was an unusually direct intervention. Everyone knew that psychiatrists were supposed to have a special interest in dreams. Maybe. She looked up, her eyes narrowing. But it wasn't a dream. It really happened. Of course. It's up to you, but you might find that talking about it could help you reconstruct things better. She nodded absently, her gaze seeming to settle on a point beyond Gregor and Rosenzweig. After a moment, she went on. Our houses had these balconies, right next to each other on the second floor. Somehow I started this thing at night where I would crawl very quietly onto their balcony, and I would hide behind one of the chairs there and watch the twins and their parents while they passed the evening. There were these windows that were quite large, and they opened up onto the family living room, and I would watch them that way, sometimes for as long as an hour. I never saw them do anything special. The twins would just do their homework or talk with each other. Their father would usually sit in his armchair smoking and reading the evening paper or listening to the radio. Sometimes he would help the twins with their homework. Their mother was always reading a book on the couch. Anyway, when I was done, I would crawl back to my house and go to bed. Isn't that odd? She blurted out the last sentence, her gaze darting to the floor where it stayed. Gregor felt self-conscious. The patient had long ago consented to his presence alongside Dr. Rosenzweig. It was a teaching hospital after all. In such moments, however, he wondered if she would have preferred that he not be there. It is a very poignant memory. The patient looked up and smiled. Dr. Rosenzweig had said the right thing. I was always terrified of being caught. What would they have thought if they saw me out there? What could I have said? I always assumed that they would tell everyone at school and that everyone would be disgusted by me and that I would become an outcast. That sounds like quite the waking nightmare. This was Dr. Rosenzweig's term for an anxiety thought that was unlikely to be realistic or probable, but which temporarily had a hold over the mind, like a real nightmare. The patient understood what he meant. She smiled weakly. Maybe, except it really happened. I'm sorry? I got caught out. I see. But it didn't happen the way that I thought it would. A strange sort of smile passed over the patient's lips. She brushed her hair back and went on. It was my fault. I made little slips with the twins, made comments that showed I knew things I shouldn't have known. I would mention a radio show that they had listened to or snippets of their family life that I had picked up. Stupid, irrelevant little details. Each time I did it, I knew I shouldn't have. I would say to myself, don't be so stupid, don't be so stupid. But then I would do it again. How do they react? They noticed, almost every time. At first they were surprised. They would ask me how I knew this or that, and I would catch myself and try to talk my way out of it, saying that I was guessing or that they must have told me. After a while, they would just look at each other when I made those little slips. Do you think you wanted to be caught? No, not at all, not at all. She paused. A sort of triple negation. A Freudian would have had a field day with that kind of denial, but neither Rosenzweig nor Gregor were Freudians. Anyway, one night, I was curled up in a ball in my usual spot, and before I knew it, the door to the balcony opened. My heart started to beat so quickly I thought it would explode, but no one came out. In my mind, I knew I should try to climb back to my house, but I was too scared to move. After a moment, a little voice called out, very softly, almost in a whisper. It said, "Alice?" I didn't say anything. I almost wasn't sure if I had heard it, but then it called out again, a little louder than before, but not by much. "Alice?" This time I definitely heard it. It was one of the twins. But for the first time, I didn't know which one it was. Then a little face poked out from behind the door, and whichever twin it was, she saw me. The tremor in the patient's fingers, always present, became more pronounced. She crossed her legs and wedged her hands between them. This didn't help. With a grimace, she uncrossed her legs. "Dr. Rosenzweig spoke. How have the side effects been?" "The same." "It might not always be this way. I know. I know how hard it is. I know." In any given day, Dr. Rosenzweig might encounter several patients undergoing similar difficulties, but he always radiated sincere empathy at just the right frequency. Gregor tried hard to emulate him, but it always came across as overdone. "What happened next?" Rosenzweig resumed. Gregor was glad that he did. We stared at each other for a moment, me and the twin, without saying anything. Then she said, "Do you want to come in for a bit?" So I did. I remember walking into that house from the upstairs balcony, and my face was burning hot, but everyone acted as though it was perfectly normal. The twins' father barely looked up from his paper, and their mother smiled at me from the couch. It was like any other time that I'd been over. It had been Clara that brought me in, and she took me by the hand to where Catherine was, and Catherine didn't make anything of it either. So it was okay in the end. It was the first time that Gregor had spoken in the session, and he hadn't meant to. Rosenzweig regarded him quizzically. The patient glanced at him briefly and looked away. His face reddened. "It was," she said. At first I was very self-conscious and didn't say much, but after a bit I calmed down. When I left, the twins told me I should come over at night more often, and I did. For a while after that, I was always nervous when we were with kids from other kids from school, that the twins might tell everyone about the whole thing, but they never did. The tremor was still there in her hands, but it seemed to have quieted somewhat. Or at least that was how it seemed to Gregor. Thanks.
We are going to take a 10 or 15-minute break. We're going to be right back with Quinn Mason. We're going to have Joe McNeil. We're going to have Olivia. We're going to have Pamela, David, somebody else. Nice. See you in 10:15.
I rank that as one among the more successful social events.
Well, that's great. So I'm just trying to tell you, the beginning of your reading, success.
So the upshot is you prefer this version.
I know that. But yeah, I do agree that Playas has like it's more engaged, it's easier to pay attention to. The other one, you had to decide that this was your kind of thing, and then you were going to be okay. This one, whether it's just like more easy point of easy access. The frat voice. But
Okay, everybody. Please get comfortable again. We're going to begin the second half of the readings. The second half is beginning. Second half is beginning, so people outside, come in, please. Standing is fine as well. Just get comfortable. Cuddling is fine. So it's playing in my head all the time. Yeah, I think so too. I'm really happy with it. Please get comfortable. If there's anybody outside, make sure that they're coming in and can find a place to sit. Okay, welcome back. So what is being passed around the crowd is our mailing list that we would ask everybody to sign just so we know who's here and so you can know what our upcoming events are about. So we're going to begin with 2 poets this time, a poet and then another poet. Begin with dessert. So the next poet I'm going to introduce is Sydney Sheedy. And Sydney is an anthropologist with a particular interest in queer studies, and she is this bright-eyed wonder of lightning intelligence who diligently came to every class. She's a self-professed nerd, which is much appreciated because I am as well. And her writing just evolved at the speed of light, like her brain works. So I'm happy to introduce Sydney.
Hi. Thank you very much for the undeserved introduction. I'm very happy to be here. This is my first time reading, so very stoked about it, and thanks for listening. So I have 3 fairly short poems, and is this loud enough also? Okay. The first one is called Soap Carving. I lick plum juice from the nail beds and broadcast softly your weightiness in my kitchen. Body is so boring to exalt, yet I clumsily baptize myself every time you cross your legs. False idol, I can hear them squeal, for your contents are more saline. The thing is, I have taken to doubling over and over for the humidity of a mouth, for the plaque that builds, for some cheap relic of the next to godly supine you. The thing is, I'm not above hauling anything onto a pedestal and demanding transmutation. For you and the breath you come with, leave me swathed in the wake of a moment, late to the next one, gasping for air. The thing is, I have wrapped at every pain with a fistful of daisies, swallowing peels of laughter to stay full, filling bags with soap curls husked from the bar in your likeness. The thing is, I will press my forehead to the cold linoleum, thinking of your ass. No one can stop me. Thank you. So this one is my attempt at a prose poem, which is fun to do. And it's called Neukölln 5 a.m. Outside the Spätkauf with a tiny bottle of Jäger, watching pulpy groups of half-friends migrate toward the club. There are 2 things I want to tell you. Your teeth are the perfect size, and my plane leaves in the morning. These are not unrelated observations. I was prepared to be the stranger, but no one cares where you're from anymore. They ask what you put into yourself and polarize accordingly. Ketamine, halal meat, Peruvian crystal anal beads, secondhand catcalls. Everyone assumes the same brood for a fleeting moment in line before making each other jealous on the dance floor. Nervous systems with debts, trembling in all the ways they usually forget to. I resent your friend for being there, for talking in his man voice when he should just leave the cocaine and us alone. There are nipple tassels at coat check and wide moon faces bathed in blue, always about to say something, fingers gripping necks of bottles and neighbors. I lose you in the bathroom, where every other outfit is, squeezing forearms, preaching love for best friends or lip color. 2 rows from the front and 3 hip lengths in, I attempt to etch a novelty into my skull, carving traces knowing they will be eroded by the routine of homecoming. Ward off this fear by remembering bus schedules and recording the price of bread, as if you are rebuilding, as if this is another Tuesday night and you have dishes in the sink, as if you will groan about rent hikes and hangovers to half friends with forkfuls of eggs in the morning. It helps to calculate time differences. It helps to offer secrets to each other and wince with recognition. It helps to embroider the name of your preferred god into your inseam, then lend the jacket to someone you just met. It helps to kiss perfect-sized teeth stained with Jaeger. It is that time of night where it has always been night. Thank you. I just have one more. It's called Final Girl. In a borrowed name town that hemorrhages into the next one, the houses are locked and numbered, but their disembodied porches are still the playground of neighborhood sons who didn't inherit enough. The boy down the street is a killer, you know, the last grindhouse on the left. Reincarnate reject, his revenge will play out on supple girl bodies like yours, so easily cleave. If she doesn't leak, she's a witch. You are just another big sister hanging up her shirt in an upstairs window. Nothing about you spells longevity, but still, the little monster fails to make you his wound like the rest, whose sex betrayed them one last time. And so, you emerge fatted at the finish line, marred with the blood of the failed litter. Your body makes legible orgasm, melancholy, and hysteria. Your body makes legible dog whistle death. Your body makes legible 1,000 sermons on keeping quiet. You would never let men take refuge in you. For this, you are spared chains with hooks and red dagger mouth inhales screaming. He's coming. Inside the house, the closet is the original safe space before you take up a kitchen blade and make the boys jealous. Every guy deserves a phallus between the eyes. Everyone deserves a girl who thrusts. Thank you.
Thank you, Sydney. Note that everybody deserves a girl who thrusts. So our next reader is David Fleming. Everyone who came to this workshop were equally as mysterious to me, and that's what is so great about the Godberd School is that people come from all different backgrounds. And he diligently came to every class, gave warm and insightful feedback to everybody, and then I found out that he actually has 1,000 children and has a whole family life and is doing his master's degree at the same time, and he's a brilliant poet. So here's David.
Hey, woo. I'm also pretty tall, so every time I speak somewhere, I do this first, which is like automatic physical comedy, right? Okay, thank you. I don't have 1,000 kids, but I have 4. That's 1,000. Yeah, that's 1,000 in Montreal money. That's so funny. I just want to say hi to Lindsay, my partner and the mother of all 4 of those kids, is here, which is rare because we have 4 kids, so you have to pay a babysitter. Also, there's a camera, and Margot. Hi, Margot. Laura's mom is here, and so these poems are all for Margot because Laura told me to talk to you, Margot. That's surprisingly nerve-wracking. So yeah, I have one poem that is about one of my daughters that got published, and so a few people, like 4 people in the world, knew that poem and then met that daughter, and were like, "Oh, I know you because of that poem." And then all 3 other kids were like, Do you know me because of another poem? And I was so part of the goal with this workshop was to write poems that mention the kids by name. So if any of you meet Kenneth or Grace in the next million years, please mention that you love these poems, even if you don't. It's fine if you don't. I don't actually mind. All right, I think my time's up. Is my time up? Just begun, okay. This one, shit. So I also, in addition to thinking about having kids and how to take care of them and make sure they don't jump into traffic, I also think about, I teach, I'm teaching a class on post 9/11 war literature. So I'm always thinking about how to stop my kids from jumping in front of the metro because they're so excited. And also like the fact that the United States, which is where I'm from, is constantly killing people. So this poem was an effort to talk about both of those things, which is inevitably going to fail. Anyway, here it is. It's called The Feminine Form of Kenneth. War is always changing. That's why it's so well funded. Literature, on the other hand, hardly changes at all. I consider this problem when my youngest daughter asks, "Daddy, can we dig up Pop Pop?" "No," I say. That's a laugh. Yeah, go for it. "No," I say, staring at his grave. "He hasn't budged in 8 years. I suppose he likes it there. His is the hole in my life where I bury his namesake daily. We drive back to Montreal, and the war's still on. The only one I ever heard him criticize was Vietnam when I asked why he didn't go." That can also be allowed. I am thinking about predator drones in the kitchen when I hear a scream. Not noticing I've turned the water on too strong, the plate in my hand curls a smooth wave over the countertop. I hear more screaming. Her name rhymes with menace, my youngest, and so many times I am shouted to the yard or a bedroom to find that she is seated on a sibling's head or thieving someone else's favorite possession, which she does not even envy. That's when she needs us most, my wife says. Connect, don't correct, the parenting blogs say. I think that's good. I am thinking that poetry is not nearly as important as my deepest longing, and neither is so desired as peace. The nations break themselves while I lift her by the armpits and scowl my disapproval. She smacks my face. I wonder what Jesus would do. Her name means beautiful in Gaelic, I think. She forbids me to shave my beard. It would leave my kisses smaller and make my mouth less hungry. It wasn't the war I wanted to fight, my dad said about Vietnam. At the pool in St. Henry, I clutch her wrist when she starts to run. She upturns my palm and shows me how gently to cup her hand. She is ambivalent about life jackets, but clings to me in the water. I actually, yeah, thank you. There was this funny moment in the poem on the page, the French word for pool. What's the French word for pool? Say it. Piscine. Yeah, I knew that. It's written on the page, but I realized when I got to it, I don't know how to pronounce it, so I didn't want to fuck it up in front of all you lovely people. Anyway, thank you. What? Piscine? Oh, don't, Laura. All right. So Margot, this next one. This next one I wrote, I guess, for my daughter Grace when we were in the ER because she had broken her leg, and it's called Cast Party. It has a million Frank O'Hara references, so I hope none of you know Frank O'Hara and you think it's all just me being a great poet. Cast Party. Grace, I wish you 6 weeks of sleep, unconscious passing of your swim-lessoned summer. I wish you grace, monkey bars, and fire pit dreams, 4 seams to each fastball, perfect pivot, your back leg unloading bomb after bomb beyond the friend-fenced sandlot of your aching. Grace to be cast and plastered with a pliable ruler to bend long enough around the corners of your line breaks. Grace that you haven't mentioned, I was not watching when you soared from platform to wood chips and buckled the same bone I broke in 10th grade, running 20 miles on each of 5 days. It doesn't occur to you that our play at the park after the dentist was happenstance. Close enough to the library, I wanted to stop. And you don't know, Mom had summoned us home 15 minutes before. We love you, Grace Fleming, get up, but your leg is already fractured. Forgive me, daughter, I'm yours. Grace, to carry you like a bride or a baby all day. At 8, you seem lighter than last year. Thanks for that. Grace, to hear your words in my head while you sleep in the hospital bed. Glory to you and our ER all-nighter, our morning after breakfast of muffins and yogurt, and thank God can afford the waterproof cast, the color of cartoon grapefruit you chose. Countdown to a new year at school, Grace. To write off a summer you'll want to one day. Sleep in, forget camp. I'll stay home and we'll two-step to the garden, run the hose in the lane, rub our cheeks with mint when we discover, surprised, it's leaves. Thanks, everybody. Thank you to Miss Broadbent and to Guillaume and to Margot.
Thanks, David. Shout out to Grace Fleming. Before we keep going, I just want to mention that you guys are all extremely beautiful. I kind of feel like we should have a runway after this so they can all show off your outfits. We are going to keep going with Quinn Mason. Quinn is... Hell yeah, Quinn! Quinn is someone that was also an unknown for me going into the workshop, but I really grew to appreciate her generosity, her positivity, her imagination, her dog, and yeah, this is someone that I'm happy to bring you. It's Quinn Mason, everybody.
So I'm going to do a shameless plug right before I talk. If no one has anything to do after, we're launching a zine at Casa later tonight. There's going to be a concert. It's going to be great. It's bilingual, and it's got some really beautiful visual art as well. So that's my plug. All right, so this is an excerpt from a short story about an artist formerly known as Sarah, who gets frustrated with her lack of recognition in the art world, and at this point she is known as Billy Joe XO89. The day Billy Joe XO89 started painting again was a Tuesday at 2:36 p.m. She hadn't left her apartment in 3 days, and the smudged eyeliner beneath her eyes was from before even that. She'd watched everything good on Netflix twice, then she'd watched everything average, then she'd started in on the truly awful one-star offerings, and she was pretty sure she'd messed up the website's algorithmic perception of her forever. Somehow, on one of those internet rabbit holes that starts with a search for cheese fries and ends with Fat Albert movie cast, she found herself watching a Green Day YouTube video, the official music video for American Idiot, to be exact. She'd been a fan in a general sort of way back in middle school, to the extent that she would Google the lyrics to the most popular song so she wouldn't look like an idiot, American or otherwise, when everyone else sang along at Evelyn Gerber's sleepover party. But for some reason, watching Billy Joe angstily belt out the lyrics this time made her numb heart stir. His raccoon-smudged eyes blazed directly into her own, and she felt like he understood her like no human had before. She found herself sketching those eyes from a million angles, widened with rebellious excitement, tear-streaked from emotional overload, slitted with the man-induced oppression. She filled whole notebooks, covered her walls, and posted photos through her new Instagram identity. Before she could even process her newfound artistic focus, she had upwards of 1,000 followers, most of them Green Day-loving 15-year-old emos in the making. She was getting encouragement, support, and interest from an entire community that appreciated her art. For the first time in months, she felt alive with creative energy and was producing work at a pace not even matched by her Adderall stint junior year. One day, as she was scrolling through Billy Joe's Instagram looking for inspiration, she noticed one of his latest pics, geotagged in upstate New York, not too far away. Sad face, lost my fave tie after the show this weekend. Life's not about material things, but you guys understand the loss of something you've loved for years. Even bought it here years ago. Weird. Billy Joe XO89 knew exactly the tie he was talking about.
black, skinny-ish, with white polka dots. She'd drawn it 100 times. He wore it in nearly every Insta photo she'd copied, and he'd lost it not so very far from her. In that moment, Billy Joe XO89 decided she would find the tie and return it to him. She packed a toothbrush, 3 Cliff Bars, and a change of underwear in a backpack, booked an Airbnb in upstate New York, and emerged from her room on a mission. "Where are you going?" her startled roommate said from the couch. She'd become so accustomed to having the apartment to herself, she was sitting in her underwear eating a burrito when Billy Joe XO89 burst in. "I'm going to Syracuse to find Billy Joe Armstrong's tie," said Billy Joe XO89, tripping on the pile of empties by the door in her rush out. On the bus ride north, she was hit with the sobering realization that she had absolutely no idea where to start looking. Undeterred, she returned to the source. Anyway, she had time to kill. 2 hours and 2,000 Instagram pictures earlier, she had found it. A clue, or if not a clue exactly, a starting point. The very first post featuring the favored tie. The geotagging on the photo pointed to a Finley's pub in downtown Syracuse. The lights were dim and her feet stuck to the floor as she stepped into Finley's, a grimy dive bar favored by the young, bored students of the college town. Seated at the bar, she stuck out like a sore, not yet poppable pimple. "Can I help you?" a barman lounging in the corner chatting with friends asked. He looked annoyed to be reminded he was on the clock. Billy Joe Armstrong was here. Several years ago, he lost his tie. Not here, but somewhere. But he bought it here. Well, probably not here, but in Syracuse. But he wore it here, after he bought it a few years ago. I'm trying to find where he bought it. The bartender, not much older than a student himself, studied her like a kid with an undiagnosed learning disability trying to take the SATs. "I'll get Steve. He would have worked here around that time. Would that help?" Billy Joe XO89 nodded, and he disappeared into the back, looking relieved to have passed off the whole thing. A moment later, an older man, middle-aged by normal standards, but positively ancient in the context of seemingly eternal immaturity, emerged from a hidden back office and approached Billy Joe XO89. "You the one asking about those Green Day guys?" Billy Joe XO89 nodded. "Yeah, I remember when they were here. Must have been 6 years ago now at least. All those depressed kids went wild. I'm looking for his tie. It's black with small white dots." Steve assessed her for a moment, as if he was trying to decide if she was pulling his leg or not. "Well, he certainly didn't leave it here. Hasn't been in since 5-6 years ago. Imagine his fan base must have changed since then." Billy Joe XO89 deflated in her seat like a popped condom. "But if you bought it in town, must have been from Feynman's off the main strip. That's the only place selling that kind of thing that would have been open back then." "Thanks," yelled Billy Joe XO89 over her shoulder, typing out a 4-star Yelp review in gratitude. Google led her to the main strip, then quite a bit off it. Feynman's did not look like the sort of place she'd imagined Billy Joe frequenting. It was dark in a way that suggested they hadn't yet made the switch to energy-efficient LEDs, and the fine suits and ties in the window looked several seasons out of fashion and entirely unsuitable for any occasion Billy Joe XO89 could imagine, save a period reenactment of 12 Angry Men. This idea was reinforced by the presence of one angry man behind the counter, who she thought might be Feynman's grandson, sullen at being bullied into the family business. Billy Joe XO89 rushed to repeat her artistically anointed mission before the irritable young man unleashed years of pent-up, familial frustration on the only stranger near at hand. To her surprise, as she ran out of breath, he inflated with a grin. "Oh, old BJ? Yeah, for sure. He's been by here. No one makes ties like Baba Vanga. That's a fact," he bragged between his thighs, already bent over and away from Billy Joe X89 and rummaging in a closet behind the desk. "Just look at the old world handiwork, the imported Italian silk, the bespoke cut. Few people know that the fit of a tie depends on how well it's tailored to the difference in circumference between the Adam's apple and the clavicle. It's called the noose number." He was pulling kaleidoscope-colored kerchiefs of varying size and cut from beneath half-finished yarmulkes. Billy Joe XO89, thrown off by his sudden enthusiasm, assumed her first impression had been mistaken. What she had taken for sullen duty was in fact solemn passion. "But do you have one like he bought before, the black with white polka dots?" she interrupted his feverish display. "I'm afraid that was a custom job, and Baba Vanga's been retired for quite a while now. These ones are the only ones left." "This one is very much BJ's style, though," he said, placing a wide and garish green silk one with embroidered yellow sunbursts on the counter between them. Though the craftsmanship was undeniable, the color palette and pattern were more reminiscent of a Big Mountain Unity cover band than the king of rebellious and subversive workwear. "No, it needs to be exactly the same as the first. Slim, black, tiny white polka dots. She turned her phone towards the clerk, a zoomed-in shot of Billy Joe flashing his white pearly teeth as he prepared to take a bite from a suspiciously stylized-looking Philly cheesesteak. Always a treat to stop at Phil's when I'm in Cleveland, #om nom nom. He contemplated the image for a moment, his small eyes scrunched, before his eyebrows moved upwards in a sigh of relief and decision. You could go visit her. Baba Vanga lives in a cabin in the nature preserve just outside town. She might be willing to make you a new one if you ask the right way. Perfect. How do I get there? Billy Joe XO89 hopped from one foot to the other. Her mind's a bit gone, though. Reason she retired. She seems to think it's 100 years in the future. You'll have to suss her out and phrase it properly, or she won't have anything to do with you. So what do you suggest? Implored Billy Joe XO89. All I can say is test the water a bit before you ask. When she left here 3 years ago, she was convinced the owner was an anti-communist and a merman, apparently a nefarious combination in the future. The clerk was already packing away the neck and head accessories spread out so promisingly a few moments before. After showing Billy Joe XO89 a guesstimate of Baba Vanga's cabin location in the blank green blob of the nature reserve in Google Maps and ushering her out the door, he reassumed his habitual expression of elite annoyance and returned to his task of rearranging the Ascot window display. After 2 hours exploring in concentric circles outward from the blue guesstimate on the overwhelmingly large green splotch, Billy Joe XO89 was tired, hungry, and a little bit horny. Her mind had begun to wander throughout her search and had inexplicably settled on a billboard for a particularly tanned and toothy realtor she had passed on her way out of town. She was just about to give up for the day and head back to Finley's pub for a pint and potential night with Steve when she saw a movement in the distance, about 50 meters northeast from where she stood. As she drew closer, she could hear humming and the sound of running water. Rounding a particularly unbridled bush, she stepped off the gravel footpath, over a low ramp, heroically erected by John Blegg, a selfless Eagle Scout contender concerned for citizens with limited mobility, who would doubtless have difficulty traversing the dribbling stream and 2 rocks it spanned, and the source of sound and movement came abruptly into view. An ancient woman stood naked beneath the weak water pressure of an outdoor shower. Images of crude rainbows adorned every surface within a 3-meter radius of the spigot. Dribbled rainbows filled the cracks and wrinkly tree trunks, and rough sandpaper rainbows reflected the texture of the rocks they stained. The woman's back was to Billy Joe XO89, but the intricate whorls that appeared in her skin as she moved her hands through her long gray hair hinted at an alarmingly high auction valuation were she a slice of extra old bitto. As Billy Joe XO89 drew closer, she realized with surprise that the woman was humming the chorus of Boulevard of Broken Dreams with impressive gusto. Excuse me, Billy Joe XO89 ventured. The shriveled back continued to sway to the tune. The grizzled claws continued to massage the lathered head. Excuse me, Billy Joe XO89 tried again. I wondered how long it would take you to find me all the way out here, a surprisingly girlish voice answered. The woman turned and looked at Billy Joe XO89 with clear blue eyes that seemed at odds with the wizened face they rested in. The whiz of a car was audible, passing unseen on the highway, apparently close at hand. I'm here looking for a tie, said Billy Joe XO89. Aren't they all, the crone responded cryptically, wrapping herself in a sarong and gesturing Billy Joe XO89 to follow. A little ways from the shower was a cabin camouflaged by ivy and stinging nettles. The old woman, who confirmed she was in fact Baba Vanga, put on the kettle and set out a plate of stale cookies while Billy Joe XO89 explained the nature of her mission. She barely looked at Billy Joe XO89 the whole time she talked and fidgeted distractedly, making Billy Joe XO89 unsure if she was following the story at all. But once she had finished, Baba Vanga snapped to attention and immediately dispelled that fear. So you want me to make another tie, exactly like the one before? Exactly, Billy Joe XO89 said with relief. But what do you stand to gain from this? Are you this Billy Joe's lover, aspiring lover, friend? Her shrewd blue eyes studied Billy Joe XO89. Close enough. I'm a fan. She turned her phone to Baba Vanga, scrolling through her Instagram feed. I'm an artist. I paint pictures of him. Baba Vanga stared at the scrolling images intently, tapping a long, unpainted nail. After she'd seen enough, she wrapped her talons around Billy Joe XO89's forearm and pulled it and the phone down onto the wooden table. If I make you this tie and you send it to him, what do you hope to gain from this? The blue of her eyes bored into Billy Joe XO89, the only pop of color in a sepia-toned landscape of flesh. Looking into those timeless blue pools, Billy Joe XO89 struggled to think straight and come up with the right or truthful answer, whichever came first. But it was neither, she heard break from her nervously pressed lips. It was, however, the right question. What wouldn't you do for inspiration? Originality. Baba Vanga wordlessly left the table, disappearing into the bedroom. When she returned, she had an antique sewing box under one arm and a bolt of black silk with tiny white polka dots under the other. Thank you.
Thank you, Quinn. The next poet that I'm going to introduce is, well, I should say first that I introduced her to the love of her life, and it's passionate and all-consuming. His name is Thomas. He's enormous now. He came into my house as a scrappy, annoying kitten that my cat Weirdo, named Weirdo, would not tolerate. And Olivia took Thomas, and it's the majority of her posts on Instagram, rightfully so, because he's just brilliant, crazy, enormous, fat, strange, wonderful Thomas. That said, so Olivia is a very refined intelligence. She came to our poetry class, one of our few students who did come from a poetry background. She's just a delight to read and hear, and I'm sure at some point she's going to be a literary superstar. There's no doubt. Let her show you for herself. Olivia.
Thanks, Laura. He's big, but he's happy. He is. That's true. That was great. Everything's been really great so far. Thanks so much for having me. I was more of a MCR person myself, but you know. Okay. I don't use her inheritance in order to punish her, but sit on the porch all day and touch the pits of nectarines, and she doesn't pay me any mind. This is my house. Occasionally, many things are possible at once. The safety impulse is complicated. They have weak necks, and the one you cherish is gone, cherishing is gone, or it is a different animal. Are you a fear gone wrong? Do you hate this place for what it done to you? Are you a commitment hung? Are you 3 days without word? Are you a trauma repeating itself? Is that repetition anything? Where does death go? Some things are more safe than others. Control blooms in you. Control eats on autopilot. Death makes you stupid. The pleasure of vertigo. The walk straight into the road. I'm not the best at reading on this, to be honest. Monument. Well, what do we do when it dies? With the red floor of death salting its wounds at us? It is good to make penance out of other things. Hardy work, death work. The miracle occurs when you name the true thing, like metallic taste of loneliness, or dream which was the weight and texture of cantaloupe, or the large rattle, rattle, rattle of a curse coming to find you. Well, what do we do when it dies? When it died suffering, if there was take and it was bad. The residents of the town passed their hands over the doors in the afternoon listlessly, one full of dread, one distracted, one whose hands had been newly animated by admiration. The currency of the dead does not ascribe much value to pity. The loose havoc of death touches you, drives down to the quarry and kisses her first kiss, plays spin the PVC pipe. It's good to make penance out of things. Some would rather try and give back the verbs tear, get, wreck, abscess, and call it law. But sometimes when death touches you, you become constructed by death, the lake and your orgasm twitching at the shore. Oh, I was going to make a joke. It's not really a joke. I was thinking when when we were learning about Green Day, there's that music video, "Wake Me Up When September Ends." Do you remember that one? It has the army connection, and I was gonna sling David's reading into that. There's something there. Somebody else think of it. It's a weird time. Mid-aughts. Okay. Name on the corner like oil. I become a little nation. A failing or skin disease as ubiquitous as the price of grain. Drone strike. Can you see me on that? A visa that lasts 3 years. Our hand half in a warm bucket of water and day grass. I have a fear that our enemies are not evil, but we kind of wonder about the work done during stupor. A stemmed sherry glass, the shelf again and again. Things happen by accident at night in the kitchen. Who is the breather? Plant hung like a boom above her. How should it appear and in what lighting? The death note. Who cries while wearing dish gloves? Little concentrated, inadvertent burst. I know a lot about sternum pleasure. You like that the mess of papers and leaves by a curb is no one's responsibility in particular. Still, items are reoccurring. Petroleum, the reallocation of desire, hot tomatoes and plain oil. Dawn, fat and lazy like lard down the edge of the pan. The kingdom and his harem, the impassive hand of law. You mark things inadmissible, and it helps. We perform under constraints, like conceit of diplomacy, mess of curls under the bonnet, the map of London whipping in the Parisian air, the stone you place your hand upon, 1,000 years old, the air without you, etc. Items hang on me ill-fitting. Ill-fitting the way you try, but it does not. Name on the corner like oil, name in their mouths as in, I can tie things to this concept. Tall, rigorous, pink and bad. She enjoys the act of dressing. The face again and again, not certain how she appears, and when, if ever. A tick toward uniform and control and safety slides hotly out the mouth, like an exorcist whose hands are suddenly fragrant, covered in clotted cream. On the rock face, hair loosely slicked down, the giving up of dress in the gold light of day, and a gesture so pointed we fall to our feet in relief. Should we do one more? Is that okay? Okay. Thanks, guys. Super excited. You guys know Guillaume's launching a book this weekend, right? Have you plugged your own book yet? Okay. I forget where he said it is. I'll let you do that again. But it's very exciting. Guillaume and I were actually when I was 18, we were in a poetry workshop together. I was 18. I surely was. Yeah, actually I was 17. Anyway. Time. This one's called A Contract. Yet in my sleeping a contract may arise. The particular shoulders of cattle twitch and fall outdoors in the blue light. Some Spartan desire within me compounds quietly, rubs cogently against the invitation that lies coyly over some arms like an era. The reversal, she-I takes and bosses, and little beach tomatoes fall out. Did I have little bluebells in the yard? Desire cancels itself in its middling hours. Desire, a bad trouble, keeps leaking out. Am I weak? Yes. Am I acquainted with mouth actions? What gets tamped down in a promise? Yes. The difference between attention and a vacuum evades me, though. After the blood after evades me also. Will it have been worth the commission, I wonder, heaping the pennies of my early sexuality against the cement of the oscillating shore, tossing the excrement over the side, thinking, so unbearable to have been near others. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Olivia. Olivia, what do your pants say? I couldn't figure out the lettering. Okay, sure, of course. Are we gonna clap for that? Let's clap for that. Let's clap for Olivia's pants. All right. Our last fiction writer for tonight is going to be someone that I knew prior to the workshop, but more as kind of like an internet sort of prankster. In a prior life, he was kind of like the Robin Hood of the bagel world. And he came to the workshop wanting to work on a novel, which I thought was really interesting to kind of get him to know him from that perspective. And so I'm very happy to bring you Joe McNeil, everybody.
Hello, hello. Okay, before I start, I'm going to make 3 thank yous. The first thank you is going to go out to Guillaume and Laura. Guillaume, brilliant dude. I don't know if all of you have done his workshop. I know like 8 of you have, but if you haven't, his workshop is like doing like bench lifts, having someone like whip you, and so like if you need your book to be put into shape, he's the guy to go to. So just like give him like a stack of bills and join his workshop. He's really great. Yeah. I don't know Laura that well, but if her wine spilling skills are as good as her poetry advice, she's very generous, so she also deserves a round of applause. Okay, the second thank you now, I don't know most of you guys, but you guys are like fucking so handsome and good looking, so I'm just like thankful for being here and having the pleasure of presenting in front of all of you because you guys are just gorgeous, gorgeous. So give yourself a round of applause for just being aesthetically admirable. I'm just being very vain. Okay, and of course, the third thank you and the biggest thank you, of course, goes to the people inside of the workshops. I have to give a thank you to like Jay and Jean and Quinn and Anya and Quinn who's not here and also Mitch Brown who's not here who just like gave the best advice. Thank you, and I'm sure like everybody who's in the poetry workshops as well, like you want to thank each other. So yeah, there, clap, clap, clap. Okay. All right, so I'm going to be presenting like a small piece from my book. There's only one fancy word in the book, and the word is crana. Now, if you don't know what the word crana means, it means like the kind of like crease between your butt cheeks. Like that's the only fancy word that I'm using. So crana, that's it. So yeah, if you hear it, clap, please, because there's nowhere else you're going to clap. Okay, all right. There's four people in this piece. It's 3 imaginary friends of myself: Alejandra, Brian, and Bonnie. We exit the bar. Brian and I, more blitzed than the girls, but not yet fully obliterated. Brian's new friend is Bonnie, a St. John's transplant who works at her sister's boyfriend's bar. Newfoundlanders always stick out in Montreal because their French isn't that good and they have a funny way of saying their A's and O's and I's. The bad French means they have a hard time finding good jobs here, and the idiomatic English draws them together like a pack, dozens and dozens of them always. And by dint of Brian's knowing a few St. John signifiers from an old girlfriend, he is quickly endeared to Bonnie. No surprise, because a Newfoundlander in exile is the most homesickly person you'll encounter in Canada. They'll thrust themselves upon anyone with whom they can reminisce about home. Newfoundlanders are also the friendliest breed of Canadian, and so it is no surprise at all that Brian and Bonnie are soon linked, arm in arm, happily chatting away with cigarettes poking out of their mouths on the corner of Saint Laurent and St. Joseph in the amber shine of the streetlights. I look over at Alejandra, and she's leaned up against the bricks, one leg cocked back like a pistol hammer, eyeing me shyly. I offer her a cigarette. She holds it in her lips as I light it. We stand there smoking, eavesdropping on Brian and Bonnie. So, do you have big plans for your time in Montreal? Oh, you know, just to work at this bar until basically forever. You like it that much, huh? Yeah. My mom and dad used to tell me from a very young age I could mix very good drinks. It's sort of my calling. Calling? What'll you do when your last call calls? Same way I approach most of my problems, I suppose. Ply them with tequila until they disappear. Someone mentions they're hungry. Okay, it was me. But because the girls aren't famished enough for poutine, we decide to get something fresh and light. We're in the neighborhood for bagels. But when I make the obvious suggestion to go to Fairmount Bagel Bakery, I'm rebuked no less than 3 times. Brian and the girls want to get bagels from Saint-Viateur. That bakery is a block further away from Fairmount, but incalculably further as far as taste buds go. I try to explain this to them calmly and coolly, but after a baker's dozen of beer, I'm not much of a debater. So, rather than winning them over with expertise and elocution, I fall back on that wonderful refuge of inarticulate genius, the A-B test. Brian breaks out 4 beers hidden in the bountiful pockets of his jacket, and we guzzle them down like greedy alcoholics. All of us, even Alejandra. The beer is warm as piss and tastes like the dregs of a metal forge. We all love it. Yeah, come on. Yeah, there we go. There we go. Okay. So, here goes the plan. First. We'll run to Fairmount and pick up a 6-pack. It's a 5-minute walk to the bakery, so a 2-minute run max. Afterwards, we'll go to Saint-Viateur and perform a taste test. On-site, Begra contra bagel. We light up cigarettes and begin sprinting, weaving between the night-stalking riff-raff along the St. Laurent Strip. We grab the girls by the waist as we hightail a left at the corner of Laurier, jumping in front of a honking cab driver, no doubt lecturing his customers on the evils of Uber. Past the fire station, then heading right onto a side street, hot fire in our chests, bladders bursting, by unspoken consensus, piled into an alley, squatting, stripping, unzipping, all of us pissing away our inhibitions. We each plant our flags in separate corners. Alejandra, next to a dumpster, hand balanced on a wall, ass cheeks out, rose bush over her crana. Brian, down the slit of a newly tippled beer can, quickly filled, then toppled over. Bonnie, into a steaming crater in the blacktop. She takes a liking to it and calls it Frothy the Pothole. Me, spelling out my initials on the brick, Norman Joseph McNeil. Thank you. After Brian spills his piss can, it begins spinning, and the oscillating piss insides comes whirling out in little regular spits of liquid. As a grand finale, Brian does a little piss parette in his corner. He exaggerated even more when he sees 2 boys poking their heads out of a window upstairs, shrieking with glee. Soon, a middle-aged Orthodox man with a great rabbinical beard and glasses as thick as pucks begins screaming at us from the window. How can you do this? This is my property. You're desecrating my property. Get out of here, I shall call the police. Brian barks back. It's Holy Land now, you son of a bitch. And we all rezip and start running away. On our way out of the alley, one of us apologizes in the soil of his garden. Less than a minute later, we hear the whoop whoop of sirens. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Joe. Your delivery reminded me a lot of Mitch Hedberg. And like your rhythm. And do people know who Mitch Hedberg is? Like my favorite comedian of all time. It's just like the delivery. Anyway, so our final poet is named Pamela. And I would describe, I'm just gonna go full poet for our last poet in my description. I would describe Pamela as a planet that you were visiting, and you love being there. There's a lot of anime. Everything's very exciting, but also you feel compelled and safe to lie down wherever you want in like a marshmallow field, and just like love your wonderful nap, and you're gonna wake up to more delightful things. Everything's good in Pamela Planet Land. So this is Pamela.
All right, this is my first time reading anything in front of anyone ever, and I'm a bit drunk because I'm last, so bear with me. The first poem that I'm going to read is actually, it's the first poem that I wrote this past year that made me realize that I'm interested in poetry and I'd like to pursue it in some way. Fuck, I'm so nervous. So it's called Fountainhead. An airplane above Iron Mountain, heavy metal taste, sore aching body. If my heart could sink any lower, then I would be dead. An airplane above iron wood feels like crunching ice and stale, grinding on a wet log, splinters, blood, cum. I think I am not in love, and you make me sick. An airplane above Thief River Falls, sleep like heavy curtains, your hands reaching inside me, a poison root ripped out. This next one is, it's the praise poem, also I'm reading a praise poem, that we had to write for the workshop, and it's called I, dash. My beautiful phone lights up with messages from my friends. My beautiful friends hum with words from my beautiful lovers, and in my hand, I hold it delicately. In my hand, I swipe the dirt off. In my hand, I touch my beautiful intimacy, manufactured through interface. Create attachment to my phone for its beautiful colors, for its beautiful cracked screen, for its beautiful streaming validation. Glowing nights spent connecting, lapel de vide, and my selfies. Make sure when you look into the front-facing camera, make sure to pretend you are seducing, beautiful emotions thrown at you. I am angry, I am sad that, I miss, I love, I want to, fuck you now. Divine extension of myself, what will you do with all my energy? Will your metal frame warp, crack with the knowledge of me? Okay, and this next one is called I Seek You. I invite you to think about that while I'm reading it. Okay. Praying in stained panties, altar of my blue light. A heart is so juicy and heaved. Sea touch type to me. This bridge that is real. I am so cute to think this is real. Pillow talk, always pillow. Lay my head down on keys. Wet pink jello slides. Inside, blind, I am sure you know me. I palm your words, lick their old sweat before I am debased in you. Divination of my face in your hands is endless, weaving pauses to witness. Okay. And this is my last one, and it's called Body Chorus. Seated inside the lining of body, muscle from bone, wrench, and the pain in a left second from the pinky toe is crawling like a runner up the length of a left leg, the one that is shorter than the other one, the higher arch. Wow, now something is really trying, carving interiors like where Adam seated me, that rib, on a round table at the core, body country. Each territory does move. Every person in each city does stomping, and maybe some crying, and maybe some declaring, finally, finally, finally.
All right. Thanks, everybody, so much for coming.
Good night.
Stick around. If you have any questions about the workshops, you can ask either Laura or myself.
Yes, there's a whole semester coming in 2018. We're accepting proposals right now we want the widest ranges of class possible offered in 2018, and it's at the lowest rate we can possibly provide for students. And scholarships are offered as well. So there's going to be creative writing in fiction, poetry, theater, and the courses are yet to be announced.
Stamp collecting, everything.
Stamp collecting. It could be anything. We're going to enjoy them.
Yeah. So just thank you to everybody who read tonight. You're all awesome. We're all super proud of you.
Yes, absolutely. It was a joy to be teaching. Like, teaching is synonymous with learning. So I was learning about all of you the entire time I was barely teaching at all. Yeah.
Cool. Have a good night, everyone. Thanks for coming
Thank
out.
you.
totally forgot about the Except just like this is kind of cozier. Yeah, but yeah, there's this like
up on the free booze is the way to go. I am on
It's not still on, is it?